A short story about our storytelling sister, Eileen Stelljes. One evening at Glenmere Lake. A number of years ago, I received a phone call from Madeline Foligno, one of the founding mothers of the Black Church Storytelling Guild. Ken, I need a favor. Sure, Madeline. What do you need? Every year, Eileen and I tell stories at Glenmere Lake. I can't tell this year. Can you take my place? Sure, no problem. Oh, great. Okay, you're going to have to stop at my house first. Ross will have a box of wood for you. Wood? Yes, campfire wood. Campfire wood? For the campfire. Ken, you'll be in charge of the campfire. Oh, okay. Ross will have a box of wood and some matches, some newspapers, and a bucket. A bucket? For the water. What water? From the lake. Ken, you're going to have to extinguish the fire when you're done. Oh, of course. Yeah. So, the night of the storytelling event, I drove to Brodowski Lane to the Foligno homestead, and Madeline's husband, Ross, had for me a box of firewood and some matches, some newspaper, a bucket, and directions to Glenmere Lake. I'm a Jersey guy, never been to Glenmere. So I drove to Glenmere Lake where I met Eileen, and we walked into the park together, walked up to the top of the hill, and set up the venue where we were going to tell. And it was a nice venue, overlooking the lake in the woods. Now I started the fire, and our guests arrived. And there were children with their parents. There were elders. There was a youngish couple, maybe about 30 years old or so, sitting on a picnic table under the canopy of a tree. It was a mixed audience, and this was a family event. So I started the fire, and Eileen and I began telling our stories. She told a story and I told a story. We alternated. Now, once it got dark, I built that fire up so that those flames licked the dark sky, and now shadows were being cast, and I got up to tell a story. And I looked down into the eyes of those children the eyes were reflecting the flames from the fire, and I began my story. Long ago, way in the deep, dark woods, not far from Glenmere Lake. And then I looked over at the elders. There lived a fella. Fella lived all alone. And then I looked over at that couple sitting on the picnic bench. And one night, holy moly! They were sitting on the bench with their faces mashed together, their lips locked as if they were attached with super glue. And I wasn't expecting to see that, and my brain froze for about a second or two, and I had to compose myself to get back into the story, and then I continued. I looked at the children. Now that fella, he looked into his fire, watching his supper cook. And then I looked at the elders, and that's when that fella, he sees something from the corner of his eye. And I turn over to the couple on the picnic bench, and Lord have mercy. Now they've got their arms wrapped around each other, entangled. They were so close you couldn't tell where one body began and the other ended. And once again, my brain froze. This was not something I expected to see. And it took me a couple of seconds before I got back into the flow of the story. But I continued, and I told to the children for a while, and then I looked at those elders and told to them. And then by habit, I looked over this way, and what the fool? They had decided to recline on the top of that picnic table. They were so close, I would not have I would not be able to pry them apart with a crowbar if I had one. Now, I got to tell you, my brain, the gears in my brain just went, and they stopped. This was not audience behavior that I expected. I mean, I've told that schools and museums and at campfires, libraries. I've never seen anybody doing that. So it really just shook me a little bit, and I had to talk myself into getting back into the story. And once I did, I told to the children, told to the elders, and then I forced myself to put a blinder up like this, and I finished my story. Now, when I was done with my story, walking back to my seat, Eileen passed me. She was getting ready to tell her story, and I grabbed her by the arm. I said, "Eileen, do you see that couple over there on the picnic table?" Eileen looked at me and said, "Yeah, I see him." I said, "Well, good luck." And she got up, and I sat down, ready to listen to Eileen tell her story. Now, Eileen began her story with the same calmness, confidence, and composure in which she began every story that she ever told. Smile on her lips, once upon a time. And she looked down at those children. There was a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood. And she looked over at the elders, and she was called Little Red because, and then she looked over at that couple sitting on that picnic table. Now one day, Little Red's mother, and she just continued to tell the story. She went from that couple to the children, to the elders, back to that couple, to the children. She didn't stop. She didn't skip a beat. She just continued the story until she finished with a smile on her lips and everyone applauded. Well, at the end of the evening, the folks came up and thanked us and left, and I went down to Glenmere Lake and got a bucket of water and extinguished the fire. And Eileen and I, we had a couple of minutes to sit down and just chat. I said, "Eileen, how were you able to keep your composure with Bonnie and Clyde doing what they were doing over there? I mean, Eileen, they could have taught us a few things." And she just laughed. "Ken, I had a story to tell, and I was going to tell it, and nothing was going to stop me." So, I learned a lesson that night from Eileen. The next time I tell a story, and you're in the audience, if you decide to stick your finger up your nose all the way to your knuckle, well, go ahead, it won't bother me. If you decide to take your cell phone out and text somebody or talk to somebody at the top of your voice, be my guest. If you decide to sit next to your boyfriend or girlfriend and kiss and hug and make out and what do the kids call it? Suck face. Yeah. Go ahead. Have fun. It won't bother me in the least. Nope. I'm going to tell my story with the same calmness, confidence, composure that our storytelling sister, Eileen Stelljes, told one evening at Glenmere Lake.